Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. Of course, you know me, your host, Zack Hamilton. But what I'm really excited about, especially for this episode, is the guest that I have in the hot seat. Martha, welcome to the show. Yeah, what I'm so excited about, Martha, and I knew I had to have you in the hot seat for this specific topic, is the state of the survey.
Mhm.
And the reason for it is about 90% of voice of customer programs today are still very focused on one channel of feedback, which is the survey. And yet we continuously see response rates below 10%. I mean, some industries it's less than 2%, some it's between 4 and 6. And if you think about it as an executive leader, I can't make strategic decisions based on very, very little feedback. And so you are the survey expert. Martha, I'm really curious when it comes to survey design, what is one thing that just makes you cringe the most?
Yeah. That surveys are sent from a do not reply address. How many times have you seen do not reply? What does that communicate to the customer? We're not listening and do not reply. It drives me crazy because there's and surveys that come from Qualtrics do that, Medallia do that, SurveyMonkey, and yet you can work with those platforms and still have that's an engineering solution that we use and still have a reply to address. Like all of our surveys come from an actual email address that the customer or employee can reply to, which is huge because one, it communicates we're listening. We want you to reply. You matter. That's point one. And point two, almost invariably, we do get feedback and sometimes critical feedback from customers or employees who say, I don't like taking surveys, but I'll tell you what I think. Or recently, we had a customer who wrote, there's no way any survey could encapsulate all of what I have to say. So I'm just going to tell you what I have to say. And these were really pointed, serious, critical points that our client had to hear. So the most cringeworthy is get rid of that do not reply. And I would say well over 95% of the surveys that I get in my inbox that flood your inbox
Yeah.
too, that flood everybody's inbox, say right at the top, do not reply.
Yes. I mean, and if you think about it, right, what we're trying to do is invite our customers into a conversation with us. And we're just slapping them with saying, well, really, your feedback doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
I want to dig in here a little bit more because a lot of we hear a lot of noise out there about the survey is dead, right? There's all this feedback that's coming in with customers that's non-solicited, right? So you have your online reviews and you have everything that's happening in dark social now, like on Reddit and other forums. You have behavioral feedback. I'm not in the camp that the survey is dead. I'm in the camp of shitty design surveys are dead, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, I guess I would say as a survey specialist, bad surveys should die. Bad surveys should die because they waste company time and they waste customer time. That's sad. That's like no one has time to just waste. And that's a double waste, customer time and company time. So bad surveys should die. There is a space for good surveys. They just happen to be very rarely done. And my best understanding of why they're so rarely done is this. You can buy Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and that's terrific. Are you a graphic designer because you bought Adobe Photoshop? I don't think so. I think you own that piece of software. So I think there's this misunderstanding in the marketplace. I'll just get a piece of software, whether it's Medallia or SurveyMonkey or Alchemar. I'll just get that software, and now I'm a survey designer. Well, that's actually not true. There's a science to There's a science and a little bit of an art to doing a really good survey. So, yeah,
So give me some examples of, and don't, not the brand, but like give me some examples of really shitty survey design that needs to die.
yeah, okay. Well, all of those subjective questions you get. It just starts with, I mean, how many times has it started with, and we use that Net Promoter. So I want to be clear about that. We use Net Promoter because many clients want it and it has some really positive qualities. Like it's a great way to benchmark if other players in your industry are using Net Promoter. We like to use it. We sometimes need to kind of reconfigure the question a little bit to really address the audience. And there are problems with the metrics on it, but I would say do away with Net Promoter. It has a lot going for it. However, understand it is a subjective question. How likely are you to recommend XYZ to a friend or a colleague? It assumes that you're somewhat likely to recommend. So keep that in mind. You're starting your survey with a generic question because I bet you've seen that question 1,000 times. So you're like, does this company really care? Because they just cut and pasted this out of Hilton, Delta, Enterprise Card. It's a cut and paste question. Are they really listening? Is that really the best question to start with? And it's a subjective, it's not a completely objective question, right? It does have bias built into it. How likely are you to recommend it? Or how satisfied were you with the rep you just spoke with? It assumes I'm somewhat satisfied. And your customers aren't your analysts, so they're not like, oh, I see bias written into this. They're not thinking like that. It doesn't mean they're not responding like that,
Yeah.
right? So I would say, I hope I didn't get us off course here, but just like those are a couple of things to keep in mind if you're trying to, entice your customers, is beware of generic questions and beware of subjective questions because those are alienation points.
Well, it's
They're not
interesting.
stepping in, they alienate me.
Yeah, but you know what's so interesting in this conversation though is the subjective questions are more of your vanity metric questions.
Oh, sure.
NPS, CSAT, OSAT, effort score. And that's where like even for me as a practitioner, everyone thinks like I'm against NPS, which I'm against NPS if you're only going to leverage the score. NPS was built as a system, right? A lot of people forget about the system aspect of it. Now, and I'm also against worshiping the NPS score, right? Where like a CEO is just like, hey, give me one metric and tell me who I can go hold accountable to this. Because ultimately, that doesn't create customer centric cultures. But I find it interesting though that the vanity metric questions are more subjective. And you're like, these aren't the best questions to at least lead off with. So what's a better type of question or an example of a question to lead off with?
Like a transaction, maybe you've just engaged with tech support. Please rate the expertise of the
Um,
tech support rep you interacted with this morning. Or do you know what I mean? It's very specific
yeah,
and you're not leading. It's not a leading construct. Just rate the expertise. So you could say bad, poor, okay, good, great. Try to use language that people actually use. Oh, it was great. It was terrible. Try to use language that people actually resonate with.
yep,
And that depends on the audience and the industry. Um, but rate XYZ that's very specific. Because how many times have you had like a bank survey that says rate your, or a Comcast or whatever it is survey that's like just rate your most recent interaction. And you know what? The rep was courteous. The
yeah,
rep was nice. The process sucked.
yes,
Now, what
absolutely.
do you say? It's like I don't want the rep to get the heat because it was the process that sucked. But it's this confluence of variables. And it makes me not want to respond because I don't want to get, or it gives you crap data. Like
Yeah,
I'm saying, yeah, it wasn't a good interaction, and yet they're thinking they don't know what it is. Was it the rep was rude? They didn't know what they were talking about, or our process was wrong? I mean, a lot of a customer experience isn't just the people you interact with; it's the back end processes that the staff needs to comply with, right?
Yeah, I always have to remind myself when I call into contact centers, knowing that I led a contact center as well, that like these poor agents are strapped with SOPs that were created 7, 8, 10 years ago that haven't been revisited.
Right.
One of the questions that I love, and I will take a lot of time to answer, is when they're, to your point, when it is, hey, rate your most recent experience with Martha
Mhm.
at this, whatever it is, when it's that specific and they make it more personalized to who my interaction was with, I will, to your point, I will definitely spend a lot more time on that specific question and then giving the more detail on why, because that's one of the only areas that you get to really say, am I satisfied with that person that's helped me?
Mhm.
Not your process, but that person. I got to ask you this other question before we get into your three-player tips. So when you think about survey design, a lot of times I see companies leverage like a VOC transactional survey as a freaking market research where they have 25, 30 questions on it. I mean, I don't understand. Like, is it maybe just because insights and VOC might fall under the same kind of insights leader? And so they're just used to longer insight like market research type surveys, or why do you think that that's the type of design?
And you're specifically talking about that length.
Yeah, the length.
Do you remember, I might be aging myself, but websites in the 90s
Yeah,
and where it was like the homepage had like some flashing pink on green and some other thing and another thing, and it's like just all this chaos. And why it was is like, well, marketing had their thing and operations had their thing. So, and no one really, just everybody wanted to be on the homepage and they
yeah,
couldn't really decide. So they just threw the whole kitchen sink at it, right? And that's sometimes what happens in organizations, forgetting about, you know what, we value our customers, like our customers have as little time as we do. So there's this kind of disconnect. Like,
yeah,
why do you think your customer has more time and interest than you do? So curation is huge. Like, get it to the questions you really need to ask. Now, we do surveys that are very long because we're doing a very comprehensive assessment of an entire organization. And guess what? We incentivize.
yeah,
You know, we say we value your time, and so we offer meaningful incentive. Sometimes it's a latte on us, which can be a gift card, a meaningful gift card
yeah,
at Starbucks. It can be something, but and it's all, or it can be the results of a research study that we're doing that, you know, people are truly interested in these research points. So there's some sense of quid pro quo that you're going to get something for this if it's a very, very lengthy survey. So there's a time and a place for the lengthy survey. That's when you're doing a comprehensive yearly or quarterly assessment to your customers. And again, the questions have to be really, really well logicated. So you're never asking one question that you don't need to of a particular person.
I mean, I do remember I've seen those memes, right, where it's like we couldn't get aligned on the type of pizza that we made, and so there's all these different types of toppings on that specific pizza. It kind of reminds me of the survey. Well, Martha, if you think about our listeners, right, who are mostly CX practitioners, CX leaders, they may be thinking about their current survey design. What's the first player tip that you have for them as they think about redesigning their surveys, or they might be designing a new survey that will help them maximize valuable customer feedback?
Yeah. The first would be to examine the survey very carefully for any leading constructs, any flaws, like double-barreled questions. You know, that's when you say, please rate the courteousness and expertise of our rep. Well, which is it? So you've already created a multivariate construct. So examine your survey very, very carefully for anything that's leading or alienating or subjective in any way. So clean it up. And if you don't have, which would be pretty common, a research staff to do that, hire out to a third party that can do that for you. So that's
Yeah,
number one. Number two, going back to the beginning, work with a company that can quickly give you a reply to email address. You need a reply to email address. If you want to show you're listening and you want to maximize response rates, make sure you can reply. Right? That's number two. Number three is, and I could go on because I have things that are like 15 tips on how to do a better survey or survey invite. I guess number three would be, ensuring you have enough response to be able to do robust analysis. And by robust analysis, we mean crosstabs and correlation analysis. So crosstabs are where you take your population and turn it into like for males age 40 to 50, here's how they respond to that question. Females 30 to 40, here's how they respond to that question. Or, that's just an example of a
Yeah.
demographic break. But you want to be able to get into the segments of your population, whether it's employees or customers, so that you're able to know for whom and what we need to change, right? So it's like these aggregate numbers mean nothing. It's like for whom and what situation do we need to spend on change? That's the crosstab. And the correlations are understanding, well, what is driving your outcome scores? An NPS is an outcome score. At the end of the day, how likely am I to recommend? Well, why? And so that's understanding within the text and within the other questions, what is driving that score so that you can change it. So you want to know your processes that result in the outcome. And all too often, companies just focus on the outcome. Well, that doesn't do anything. You already
Yeah.
have the outcome. So it's really dry. You want to be able to isolate those processes that are going to most clearly quickly impact your resultant score, whether it's satisfaction, customer effort, NPS, whatever that is. So those would be just top of mind, a few tips. Is that helpful?
I love those three player tips because ultimately the other one that I think about too is everyone has to keep in mind every interaction is a brand interaction. And so when I see on surveys, for example, and I always have to remind them, well, do you want to bring your own brand tone of voice into the survey? Because it's a branded interaction. But yet too often I don't see them really even thinking about that. And it's just so off brand. And I just think I'm with you. I don't think the survey's dead. I just think very shitty design surveys need to go.
Yeah. I would love to do a whole segment with you on branded interactions because I mean, this is really where the brand lives and dies is with interactions. They can be digital interactions, they can be human to human via phone, chat, email. They happen in different ways, but that's where the brand resonates. That's where it comes to life, not with the logo, not with the sometimes with the ad campaign. There are some ad campaigns where it's really bringing the brand to life. And certainly for shareholders, like the advertising can be huge. But in terms of your customers and employees, those interactions are what they remember. They don't really remember your logo. They remember the interaction they had. They got stuck in the shopping cart and then they just dumped it. It was too much. They thought they could use a promo code. It didn't work. It's like, yeah, go on to the next. They talked to somebody who really didn't understand, even though the company says it's all about being the expert. And it's like, that's what a customer, because humans remember humanity. They just don't remember the book, the logo, the anything. They remember the interaction. As humans, we are interaction driven. So that's where if marketers want to spend money in interesting ways, think about interactions and how to brand them. And that, like I say, that could be a whole very interesting topic
Well,
for us.
you should come back to the hot seat and let's dig into that a little bit further.
Yeah.
But Martha, if there's anyone who's just like, oh my gosh, maybe I should do a survey audit, or maybe they're going through a survey redesign, or they're getting ready to launch a new survey and they just want to pick your brain on it, where can they find you?
Yeah. So just going back to our last point, and remember the survey is an interaction. The
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
survey is an interaction. Like, I
Of
just
course.
want your audience to take that away. Sure, on LinkedIn is great. So, just Martha Brooke, Brooke on LinkedIn. And then Interaction Metrics is our company. So interaction, like we're having an interaction, and metrics like the number. So just interactionmetrics.com. So those would be two great. And if you fill out the contact form and say, I want to talk to Martha, it will come to me. So those would be two great ways to get in touch. And I love I love talking to people about what they're doing, what they're thinking about surveys, or any kind of customer or employee feedback for that matter. I'm always open to the conversation.
Very cool. Well, Martha, I appreciate you coming to the hot seat. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
back soon. Come back
All
soon.
right. Will do. Thanks. Bye.